and I said, I am so sorry for what I have done that caused you this pain in your life. Would you forgive me?
You may remember that clip from our June 3rd episode with John Paulk. Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
We've had people writing in and asking us to address conversion therapy for quite a long time because we understand the dangers that it presents and especially the damage that it can cause. And we thought, who better to talk to than a friend of the podcast, John Paulk. John is a close friend and told his story here to us here a few months ago. So we returned to John, and we thought we wanted to bring him some of the questions about conversion therapy.
You'll hear some of the things that will surprise you as it surprised us. You'll hear speaking from the heart. You'll hear understanding from a perspective of someone who's lived it, someone who's gone through it, somebody who has faced the reality of conversion therapy, someone who is now free, and understanding of what can be done to bring these people back to a feeling of honesty and sincerity and knowledge that the way they are is normal.
There are a few topics that get me more emotional than this conversation about conversion therapy. And the reason is because it's so personal. I was a pastor in a conservative church for a very long time. And in fact, that is where I first encountered John. When I went to a seminar that he produced through Focus on the Family, it was called Love One Out. And he presented at that time a vision of how gay and lesbian people no longer had to live as gay and lesbians and how you could be changed. And as the clip that we played at the very beginning makes clear, he discovered that he was doing more harm than he was good. And I know that experience very well myself. I had a gay man, a bisexual man actually, that was a member of my church that I have had to go back to since then and apologize to and say, I told you that God wanted you to change, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. And he said, you don't need to apologize to me. I never listened to you at that time anyway, which really put me at ease. But I know that some of the dangers of conversion therapy is not just the dangers that it causes to the people that go through it, but the tremendous damage that it causes to those of us that bought into it and said, you can be different. You can change. And we were wrong.
And the damage that it caused is what you are about to hear. You will understand the damage from someone who experienced it and tried to sell it to others. Very difficult.
So with that, we'll go ahead and play the interview for you. You're going to get a lot out of this. We'll see you on the other side. John, would you talk a little bit about the dangers of conversion therapy for somebody that is not convinced, that says, no, I think you can still change? What is your message now?
The proof is there is no proof. There is no proof that people's sexual orientation can change. There have been no studies done on it. Every major medical and psychological organization, everyone in the United States, have disavowed it as junk science. But I think the deepest, darkest damage that it does to people is it creates lifelong self-hatred, guilt, shame, feeling less than a person. It puts your faith in jeopardy. You feel different from everybody else. No matter how hard you try at this thing, it won't go away, which compounds the guilt. You truly feel so bad about yourself, and a lot of drug addiction can start, compulsive acting out sexually in secret. It ruins lives at the deepest core, because your sexuality is such an intrinsic part of your identity and who you are, and you have no control over it.
When I listen to your story, the thing that resonates with me is the fact that man is what's separating us from God. God is not separating us from him. It is other people out there who are doing the separating.
Well, to me, one of the most dangerous places to grow up in is a Christian family.
Yeah, I can see why.
I think that's a dangerous place to grow up in, because the church, especially the evangelical church, is so based on behavior. They're missing the whole point. It should be about the relationship. It's about your behavior. And we are forced as Christians to go underground with our struggles. I don't care who you are. We have to go underground. You walk into church, you have a happy smile on, you're dressed nicely. What are you going to do? Pour your troubles out?
Yeah.
It's very dangerous in a church to do that.
But the good news is that some churches are changing. Raya and I are working right now on starting a PFLAG group, and we are meeting in the Episcopal Church.
The Episcopal denomination was one of the first ever to embrace gay and lesbian and transgender people into their congregation and into their leadership.
Yes.
They were the first denomination to do that.
And they're very supporting of us right now.
And they would be, because nationwide, probably, I don't know about other countries, but they are very embracing. There's so many gay and lesbian and transgender people who are priests in the Episcopal Church.
That's true.
Level of leadership.
And we're experiencing the same thing in the church that I belong to, which is the Lutheran ELCA church.
Sure.
And our assistant bishop is transgender. They, in 2015, said that they were fully accepting, but churches individually could make their own decisions. And It was only in this past month that our particular church has not only become fully accepting, but you're willing to marry couples in the church and outside of the church, and there's no restrictions anymore on any part of it. I use the analogy, it's like being left-handed. That shouldn't restrict me from anything. And I'm proud of being left-handed, and I'm fine with it. That doesn't make me any different from anyone else. And the same thing is true of LGBTQ people. It's like left-handed. Once you would, you're left-handed, we don't talk about it again because you don't need. Your son said it exactly right. We don't think anything of it.
Right.
That's cool.
Now, I do live in the third largest, easiest state to be gay in the country. I live in Portland, Oregon, has the third largest gay population per capita. We are a very protected class of people here. Transgendered, the whole bit. We're very protected here. And that's why gay people flock to move to Portland. is because they find tremendous acceptance, or at the very least, indifference. It doesn't matter either way.
Sure. I have two close friends, one from high school, one from college, that both came out pretty early and both moved to Portland. So one of my best friends from high school, she and her wife live there, and they're raising a girl, and they just have a beautiful family and they're very happy. A friend, the very first person that ever came out to me, I think I remember sitting in the dorm on the stairs, and he was just weeping because he thought it was going to ruin his career, but when it came out that he was gay. And I was the first person that he trusted with that, which I was very grateful for. And
You know, Portland has the highest number of transgendered people of any place in the country. Number one.
I did not know that. No.
Yes. Portland is a place where you can be yourself, and they've woven it into the government. 2 successive governments have been lesbians, 2 in a row.
John, how did James Dobson come to the realization that this was damaging them and not doing any good?
He never came to that realization.
But he killed the program.
No, Exodus did.
Oh, I see.
Exodus was the separate organization that had over 100 ministries underneath its umbrella. Focus on the Family was its own organization, and that's where I ended up working and having visibility. No, my wife is still on Dr. Dobson's radio show regularly.
Would you talk a little bit about what your relationship was like with James Dobson once you came out, or how this happened, if you're comfortable telling some of that story?
So by the time I had come out, I had been away from Focus on the Family for 10 years. So I left Colorado. I left my job. I became a chef. I was a chef now for 10 years before I came out. What I can say is, and this is hard for people to believe because so many people hate James Dobson and have a perfectly good reason to do so, I have to say that man truly loved me. I don't know if I got under his skin, because truly I was still the same person then and now. My intrinsic personhood has been the same. He deeply cared about me, but he still believed what I was doing was wrong, that I should remain ex-gay.
So I imagine that must have been exceptionally difficult. I know when I left conservative Christianity and started to become involved in the LGBTQ plus community, I was really surprised at the conversations that I was hearing people have about Focus on the Family, and what I felt like were misrepresentations, because I thought to myself, wait a minute, I grew up listening to Focus every day on the ride to school in the morning, as my mom had it on in the car. I remember that 99% of those broadcasts were about how to be more loving, how to be more forgiving, how to be more caring. It was very rare that I heard anything that I felt was down on people like us. But there was a bit, and it was that bit that was toxic.
Yeah. Well, again, Dr. Dobson didn't talk about homosexuality until the whole movement with when it became political. The headquarters of like the biggest Christian ministries, they took this issue on and they blended theology with politics. And they were seeing that laws were being changed state by state to grant gay and lesbian transgendered people the same rights they should have had as anybody else. They wanted to put a stop to it. I remember one of the first assignments I was given. I think I was at Focus on the Family 7 weeks. They sent Anna and I and my 4-week-old son to the state of Hawaii to lobby state congressional leaders about some bill that was before the state Congress having to do with domestic partnership or something, and we would go into the office, set our son in a bassinet on the desk of the senator or congressperson of Hawaii and tell our story. And you're very hard to argue with. You've got a woman and a man who are married, who were gay and not, and they have a child sitting in front of you. Try arguing with that. Very hard to argue against that. And that was our story. I know I hid behind marriage because it's like, see, look at me. I'm married. I have kids. And part of what I had to overcome was that so many people looked up to me and they were like, I want to be just like John Paulk. He looks happy. He's got a beautiful home. He's an eloquent speaker. He's got a lovely wife. They've got children. They're the normal American family. I want to have that and be that. And so you can imagine how many people, when I came out, were angry.
Hi, I'm Andy Barrett, a Lutheran pastor and a supporter of this podcast. I see Transcendent as a ministry. I've pointed many people toward these recorded conversations full of so much heart and care and warmth, as well as some of Joe's jokes, which are hands down the worst part of this podcast. But even they make me smile. I'm one of the many genuinely blessed by Transcendent, and I encourage you to join me in supporting this podcast by giving as little as $3 a month. Go to transcendent.com and click support.
What question do you often get asked that we haven't asked you?
You know, in 20 years, I have chosen to remain silent.
Yes.
Completely. I haven't granted, up until recently, any interviews. I just wanted to be silent and work my life out. But I've started in the past couple of years emerging again because I'm healthy enough to talk about this. And don't let the tears cause you to think I'm not healthy to talk about it. The tears are of joy and they're of heartache. So I don't know. What I would love to do is speak on college campuses to students, to young people, and have an open forum and talk to them and have them ask me questions and answer as honestly as I can. Mm-hmm. No one like me is doing that I know of. I'm hoping this podcast will open doors for that.
Most campuses have a Pride Center, and some are very, very well done.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more and more common. It's unusual to find a campus that doesn't have a Pride Center.
Trust me, even if they're a conservative Christian school, it's underground, but it's there.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
That's right.
What do you think about the newer movement now? I'm seeing people, for instance, like Wesley Hill, coming out and saying, yes, I'm gay. I will always be gay. I will never change, but I'm choosing to live a celibate life because I believe that's what the Bible calls me to.
I have no problem with that. The Bible does say, if you are not married, you are not to have sex. I didn't write it or say it, but the Bible did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny, there used to be in our movement, formerly, we were called now ex-gays. There has to be a label, XX-gays. There was a movement in there, and you were either on side A or you were on side B. And I might get the sides wrong, but in essence, side A says you can be gay, you can embrace who you are in every way, live a gay life, but you're choosing to remain celibate because you're not married. And I would say, well, that's because they haven't fallen in love yet, but wait till they do. Then side B said all those things, but yes, you can have gay relationships sexually.
Mhm.
I'm on side B, by the way. If anybody's out there and wondering, I'm newly single on side B.
And yeah, where did they send their request for a date?
All over the internet, you'll find me. Facebook me. I feel like this is the life that God had in store for me all along.
Yes.
Was
I'm
it-
involved in a Bible study right now called Detours. And you experienced a long detour.
Yeah. And it was long and it was very painful, but the pain is gone now.
Yeah,
And
that's wonderful.
hey, I could choose to remain completely silent on this issue. I don't have to talk about it. I can go on and live my gay life, my normal life, with my culinary endeavors, etc., and never mention this again. But I chose to do that for a period of time. And my partner used to say, you know, some days you say you're never going to talk about this again. And then other days you're all up and angry about something you heard in the news. And you want to shout it from the rooftops because you're so mad. And he goes, should I just expect this for the rest of our lives, that you're going to do this? And I said, yeah, I think so, because it's in my blood. God gave me a very unusual life. When you've been through what I have been through, both sides, who else is going to talk about this? It's just interesting. I'm a mouthpiece of sorts. I am also a strong defender of my faith. I talk very openly about my faith in God, and I identify as a Christian. I have a life with God. That is extremely important to me, and I'm not ashamed of that. God has not changed. Even when I was ex-gay, it was the same God. His relationship to me hadn't changed. God has always been good to me, because to not would go against his nature, to not be good to me or any of us. God delights in giving good things to his children because he loves you. And that's the way I parent. That's an important message. If I could say anything, is the church and God's people are not God, and sometimes a horrible representative of him. Mm-hmm. So I let God represent himself. One of the things that's so freeing to me is I don't know, and I don't have to know all the answers to everything. I just say, I don't know. I'm sure one of the two biggest, which I alluded to earlier, questions I probably would be asked is, were you born gay and did God make you this way? And my answer is, I have no answer for that. I don't know. So I live in that not knowing, and it doesn't bother me one bit. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I was born this way or made this way or parts of both. Who the heck cares? It doesn't change the fact that I am, and that I'm here. Mm-hmm. So then what do? Okay, you live your life, you embrace who you are, you live your life in the most compassionate way you can, and you hold up principles of God's character and God's nature. And that love just pours out onto people.
And the thief on the cross proved you don't have to know a whole lot. You just have to say, I believe you.
That's right.
Very moving interview with John Paulk. This is actually just part one. We're going to come back next week with some other parts of our conversation. And next week, we're going to really be seeing the conversation that John and I had as I share my experiences in ministry. And we compare and contrast what we went through. That was a very meaningful part for me. You're going to get to hear about how John is telling his story now and the way things have changed.
If you haven't done it yet, we do recommend that you go back and listen to the June 3rd podcast that we did this year. That gives you the history of where he was and what he had gone through to bring him up to today. From here on out, we're going to give you, as Paul Harvey says, the rest of the story. We'll encourage you to come back here again next week to hear more from John Paulk.
This is an important conversation. You'll want to be back here for that.
And we'll see you Monday.